though. Those are potentially very harmful. You think of a Toxtricity that can either cause paralysis or poison, depending on how the cookie crumbles for you. There's not a lot of Lumberry in the format, right? There's not a lot of ways to get rid of the potential confusion you can get off of Gmax Smite from Hatterene. So it could potentially be a Gigantamax option that does not have a lot of people prepared for, and that is why Ben has performed so well here in the Oceania region.
Yeah, just like the combination of Dusclops and Amoonguss, Hatterene and Indeedee work very well together. You get Follow Me, you get Psychic Terrain up, so there's no priority moves. And Mitchell is going to have to really consider how he will counter Trick Room in this matchup, because there are many ways for Ben to accomplish whatever speed he decides. I mean, we spend so much time talking about speed control with Trick Room. You also have the Chlorophyll, Venusaur, and the Torkoal as an option as well. So I cannot wait to see how Ben is going to approach this game, and I cannot wait to see how Mitchell is going to handle this really formidable matchup.
Well, let's wait no longer as we get into game one between Mitchell Dix and Ben Madigan. Both of these players are in losers round 3 here in the Oceania region. The winner moves on to face Christopher Kahn in the next round, former international champion. The loser goes home. So the stakes could not be any higher. Comfey Goodra, surprisingly, is the lead, and happily for us, is the lead out of Mitchell on his end on the bottom of your screen. And Indeedee Hatterene is the other very, popular combination, especially with this team composition for Ben.
I think the Goodra is a bit risky, though, given that Hatterene is a Fairy Psychic type Pokemon. Even though Goodra could get the Weakness Policy activation here, thanks to the help of Comfey, I'm not sure it's the Pokemon you want to lead in this matchup, though Comfey is exactly where it needs to be. As you can see on your screen, this Comfey has access to Trick Room, and I think we touched on this the other day when we saw Mitchell on stream. Trick Room on Comfey is really the only move he has that can stop the opposing Trick Room. So you gotta just watch the Twisted Dimensions and make sure you know what you're doing. But as many Hatterene players do, you don't necessarily have to go for turn 1 Trick Room when there's that Indeedee female by your side.
Absolutely. Even though you are a slower Pokemon, if you can get a lot of offensive pressure out on these 3 turns of Gigantamax attacks, you don't necessarily need to be slower in Trick Room. Indeedee going for Helping Hand, so that will boost the damage coming out on Hatterene's end. No Dynamax though from Goodra. Instead, there will be the Draining Kiss out of Comfey. Does have priority thanks to its ability, giving Comfey priority access to healing attacks like Draining Kiss there. So it will actually attack. The Goodra, I should say, will connect onto both Hatterene and Indeedee with the Weakness Policy boost. Not too much damage though, and Gmax Smite will take down the Goodra, and that's the answer to why didn't you Dynamax Goodra? Because Goodra was going to get knocked out to Gmax Smite.
Honestly, Gmax Smite might have done enough damage to Goodra to knock it out, even with the Dynamax after a Helping Hand, knowing that it is the Weakness Policy variant and not a bulkier variant with something like Assault Vest as they are known to run. Another reason why you don't Dynamax that Goodra is knowing that you have Metagross in the back of your party, and Metagross has a fantastic matchup against Indeedee and Hatterene. It can hit the Hatterene for super effective damage with a max Steel Spike or a Iron Head. You can boost up your special defenses with a Max Quake. I think you have to count on your first attack here not connecting, since Indeedee can still go for Follow Me. And then next turn, you can target that Hatterene and knock it out. That all being said, Hatterene is still in the running this turn because this Hatterene has access to Max Flare from a Mystical Fire. If Hatterene can find a way to connect 1, possibly 2 attacks with this Metagross, then it should be able to remain on the field until the Dynamax has expired, set up Trick Room, and just sweep the remainder of this game.
Mitchell will switch Grimmsnarl into that Comfey slot. So now we know all 4 of Mitchell's Pokemon. The Comfey is sitting in the back. Dynamax Metagross is the option for Mitchell here on this turn. Of course, can hit the Hatterene, super effectively with a Max Steel Spike, but that's not going to happen as long as Indeedee has something to say about it, because Indeedee has Redirection here. and will force that Max Quake to go towards the Indeedee instead of Hatterene. A nice adjustment out of Mitchell, understanding that Indeedee was going to redirect that attack away. So get a Max Quake boost onto both of your Pokemon here, increasing your special defense by 1 stage, letting you tank the Max Flare just a little bit better there. And that's, you're down to 50% HP here. If Grimmsnarl has access to Light Screen or something like that, that lets you maybe ensure you can live another Max Flare.
And that's going to be super duper important. Unfortunately, though, now you also have to contend with this Venusaur, which carries Earth Power, as many Venusaur are known to do. The combination of 2 attacks into that spot would be enough, I think, to knock out that Metagross. You have to go for that bulk ultimately, but I like how Mitchell is instead slowing things down and using Max Guard. At least this way, Hatterene won't be in its Gigantamax form, and those attacks are more likely to knock out.
Yeah, the Venusaur went for Sleep Powder into the Max Guard, so it wasn't able to attack there. G-Max Smite does connect onto Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl, unfortunately, trying to go for a Prankster, boosted target there, or with its Prankster ability, trying to gain priority on its status that it was trying to inflict. But the terrain was actually able to negate it there, so nothing happened out of Grimmsnarl on the turn, and now Mitchell is down to his final 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, that Grimmsnarl went for a Scary Face, which would have lowered Venusaur's speed by a couple of stages and mitigate the Chlorophyll boost and allow the Metagross to outspeed and not have to worry about those Sleep Powders. Unfortunately, that was unable to connect, and now on top of having to worry about Sleep Powder, this Metagross is also confused, and if it decides to hit itself in its face while it's going for these Dynamax attacks, that's going to be a huge disadvantage for Mitchell. I do love how you save the Metagross for the Dynamax. You give it as much health as you possibly can with the help from Comfey, but there is so much status being thrown around in this game.
Not only is Metagross confused, but it is also asleep. So Metagross is really having a difficult day here in Game 1. Trick Room from Hatterene, now that it is out of the Gigantamax turns, will set up the Trick Room, twisting the dimensions. Of course, that does make the Venusaur an incredibly slow Pokemon because the sun is up. But right now, it lets Hatterene be faster than Metagross. You can go for Sacred Fires again into those slots, and Metagross has to worry about, even if it wakes up, if it might stay confused.
And that is going to result in a really tough endgame for Mitchell. Fortunately, Comfey could have gone for a Trick Room this turn to try and get the dimensions back in order, but then you still have that Venusaur to contend with. It's a really tough spot.
Mystical Fire targeting onto the Metagross. Not enough for a knockout. I do think it is pretty funny seeing Metagross. It's still so menacing, even with its eyes closed. Like it's trying to take a nap, but it's still ready to go. It's of course not going to be able to go anymore in this game as the double target takes it down. Venusaur securing the knockout, and now with just Comfey against the Hatterene Venusaur, and Ben has not even revealed his 4th Pokemon in this game. This one is wrapped up for Ben.
Yeah, I'm like going through my mind and trying to figure out what Ben's last Pokemon is, because I think that will impact, what Mitchell decides to bring strategies-wise going into this game too. If it's the Torkoal, then this Venusaur would have gotten those Chlorophyll boosts regardless, but if it was the Dusclops, that would have been another way for Ben to ensure that Trick Room would have gotten set up on the field. So I think traditionally when you bring Hatterene and Indeedee and Venusaur, that last Pokemon is going to be that Torkoal. And especially given that Mitchell has not used Trick Room once on Comfey, despite the dimensions being all twisted up, it is a good reason for Ben to just stick with what's tried and true. Bring that Torkoal, bring that Venusaur, bring that Hatterene Indeedee. You don't need the turn 1 Trick Room when you...
Let us get into this matchup here, because if he doesn't have a great answer for G-Max Smite or for Indeedee Female, this could be a very quick 2-0. Taking Mitchell out of the bracket altogether and moving Ben on to the next round here in Losers. Metagross Grimmsnarl is the lead for Mitchell. I love seeing this adjustment. This is what I just called out against the Hatterene Indeedee.
Yeah, and it's going to be critical for Mitchell to go for the light screen, go for the big damage onto Ben's side of the field. But Ben, I think, has an opportunity here to do things a little bit differently himself. You know that Ndidi going to go down in one hit. You know that your opponent is going to get that light screen up. Maybe, just maybe, don't go for the turn 1 Gigantamax on the Hatterene this turn. Instead, and just assume the Ndidi will go down. Bring out whatever that mysterious 4th Pokemon is, if it's the Torkoal, if it's the Stakataka. And now you have 2 powerful Pokemon in Trick Room. You can take your pick of Dynamax and adjust accordingly to the strategy that Mitchell is going to play out.
Well, Mitchell has decided to Dynamax his Metagross here. That was something that he wanted to do earlier. Of course, it took a little too long to get set up in Game 1, but now at the start of Game 2, he's able to get it rolling right away. Ndidi female with Follow Me, one of the best moves in all of VGC, being able to redirect attacks that are potentially going towards your teammate and instead into the Ndidi. This Max Quake from Metagross will target Ndidi, so that does over half of Ndidi's HP. Not enough for a knockout, but it is enough for a 2-hit KO, so Mitchell, if he wants to go for that next turn, can do it. Metagross revealing the Life Orb, obviously can't hold Weakness Policy because Goodra has it, and this is why Hatterene did not Gigantamax, because it went for Trick Room.
Unfortunately, that Grimmsnarl, unlike the Comfey, doesn't have an opportunity to try and reverse the Twisted Dimension, so Hatterene will get the option to attack whatever target it picks this turn. Ndidi most likely going to play it safe and go for a second Follow Me, so that slow, hard-hitting Torkoal, if it is in the back of Ben's party, can make an appearance next turn. And then you have the combination of a G-Max Hatterene, most likely, and a Torkoal to knock out that Metagross through the light screen. I think if I were in Ben's shoes, I would go for the G-Max Smite straight into that Grimmsnarl, because then on top of all of that damage, you have the confusion rolling around as well. This is why G-Max Hatterene is one of my favorite Gigantamax Pokemon.
It's such a threat if you're not prepared for it, and of course Grimmsnarl, being a dark type, is weak to the fairy type that Hatterene has there. So G-Max Hatterene is the option for Ben here on turn 2. With the Trick Room set up, it will be moving faster than Metagross, so not only will you get a strong attack off, but you're also going to have to force, with this G-Max Smite, you're going to have to force the Metagross to break through Confusion, which who knows if that will happen. Grimmsnarl does endure the hit this time around because of Light Screen being set up the previous turn, and both Grimmsnarl and Metagross have been confused. So will Grimmsnarl attack first? We saw it went for Spirit Break. It does break through. It will connect on to the Ndidi though, so it is enough for a knockout. Ndidi is down. Now Metagross, if it breaks through, does not have to waste its attack onto this low health Ndidi, and Metagross is attacking. This will be super effective into G-Max Hatterene, and a 1-hit KO. A gigantic turn of breaking through Confusion for both Grimmsnarl and Metagross on Mitchell's end.
And that is just how Confusion works sometimes. But I think this Hatterene has done a fantastic job of making sure these next couple of turns will be a bit uncertain for Mitchell, because until that Confusion ends, these Pokemon are not going to be guaranteed to attack. We also got the reveal of the Life Orb on the Hatterene that turn as well. You know, we saw that in Game 1, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about it in Game 2, because this Hatterene, even though it's a Trick Room Pokemon, it's really one of those Pokemon like you see in the Regieleki, in the Spectrier, where they're meant to go down in 1, maybe 2 hits, but while they're on the field, they're going to be doing as much damage as possible. And Life Orb, especially if you're running a team like Ben, when there aren't other Pokemon that want to hold that item, is the perfect opportunity for that. Knowing Ben's last 2 Pokemon are Torkoal and Venusaur are certainly going to change how the remainder of this game plays out, because Trick Room is still up. Because the light screen is still up, Torkoal is not guaranteed to pick up a knockout on that Metagross, especially on top of the Dynamax with something like Eruption, even though that is going to be probably the most powerful attack we'll see this game. So it's really going to come down to those Confusion turns. If Metagross cannot attack this turn and Ben gets a second Eruption in, that is going to be huge.
Eruption is able to take down the Grimmsnarl. Remember, Light Screen is up. That is damage through the light screen because of how strong the sun is. That's how strong. And this was the move you had to go for. Max Hailstorm into the Venusaur. One, it's super effective, but two, you'd get rid of the sun, which negates some of the damage that Torkoal can have in this matchup. Venusaur is knocked out cleanly from the Max Hailstorm. Life Orb brings Metagross down a little bit here. And now you're going to have to get through Trick Room if you're Metagross. You still have Goodra and you have Comfey in this spot, so it is 3-1 right now against Torkoal with no Sun Boost, so it is looking promising.
It is looking promising, and I'm going to throw one other fun fact at you, Joe. This Torkoal is holding choice specs. So Torkoal is only able to use Eruption, and even though that will still pick up a knockout on the Metagross this turn, provided the Metagross doesn't go for a Protect, as long as Goodra is able to do some damage to that Torkoal, those Eruptions are just going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. So Mitchell making a fantastic adjustment between games 1 and games 2, leading that Grimmsnarl, getting that light screen up, and more importantly, just finding those attacks even though Confusion was active.
Yeah, this has been a really fun set so far where you thought Ben convincingly took game 1, and then Mitchell really needed some luck on his side to break through Confusion, which he has been able to do twice. Of course, now Mitchell gets hit with his own Confusion, which is I think he'll take as a kind of a trade that I got 2 full attacks off while I was Dynamax. I understand. I'm playing with fate as I knock myself into Confusion and then get knocked out from the Eruption. But of course, with Goodra being a Dragon type, he can take Eruptions all day. Muddy Water is a single target attack now. Critical hit from Goodra will cleanly knock out the Torkoal, and Mitchell Dix has forced a game 3 here in losers round 3. He's not going home
and do some shenanigans there, but we'll have to see what Ben is feeling. I think for now, though, it's time to jump into this last game to see who will be moving on in the tournament and whose tournament life will end here.
And there is the presence, the myth, the legend, the Ultra Beasts themselves, Stakataka, making an appearance in Game 3 with your tournament life on the line. There's no other Pokemon you'd rather trust than Stakataka.
You sound very happy to see this Stakataka on the field, Joe, and I can honestly see why, because if we're talking about Pokemon that get access to Trick Room and don't care as much about those max Steel Spikes from a Metagross, good old Stakataka is the way.
There will be no switches, though. I'm so excited. It's awesome seeing the adjustments that they've made here. Like, Mitchell had a rough game 1, so then he switches to Grimmsnarl Metagross, and then now Ben breaking out Stakataka as like the protagonist who's sitting back at the end of the team party waiting for its moment to shine. That's what I really want to see in this spot. There will be no Dynamax, though, on Ben's end, of course, because we presume a Trick Room is going to be set up. Reflect out of Grimmsnarl will have all physical damage coming out from Ben's, and the Max Steel Spike into Indeedee is a lot of damage. Doesn't matter how much it did, because Indeedee is holding a Focus Sash, so it will remain on the field at 1 HP.
This is an interesting mix-up from Mitchell because there is so much physical bulk on the field, but Ben hasn't locked into a Dynamax option yet. It's possible that Stakataka just goes for a Gyro Ball into the Grimmsnarl, hope that you can find a knockout through the screens, through the defense boost, and then later on in the game, maybe rely on Hatterene or Torkoal in the back. If Grimmsnarl is unable to get Light Screen up, which it can be tempting not to go for it since there really isn't a need for it this turn, that is something that Ben can take advantage of later on in this game, and you have to assume that Indeedee will be knocked out this turn. So it's a risky play choosing not to go for Light Screen here. I think that 9 times out of 10, Grimmsnarl does have at least one more turn on the field, at which point he can go for it, but still, it's a tough call.
It's a very difficult decision for Mitchell. You have to know you have to be able to assess, do I have light screen up now because I'm going to need it in future turns? Or do I do something that is more offensive in this moment that helps me out in this position? It's a very difficult decision Mitchell has to weigh back and forth on. Stakataka will Dynamax, so those are some gigantic, alien bricks all stacked up here in the stadium, and it's very exciting, but it will go for Max Guard this turn, so there is not going to be an attack. Indeedee protecting as well, having the Max Steel Spike go into Max Guard was a very smart turn. Now, you would assume Indeedee is almost forced to follow me this turn so that Ben does not take a gigantic amount of damage from Max Quake on Metagross's end.
Oh, definitely. But as we saw in that previous turn, Grimmsnarl is going to move first, which means Metagross can still take its pick of who it wants to target going into this. So Indeedee will be knocked out, but this will also be an opportunity for Ben to get his special attacker in and possibly, threaten the Metagross with the Torkoal, with the Hatterene, maybe even the Venusaur. So it's going to come down to, will Grimmsnarl be around next turn?
Max Steel Spike from Stakataka into Grimmsnarl, takes it out. That's a one-hit KO for Stakataka. Not only getting rid of Grimmsnarl, but increasing his defense by one stage thanks to Max Steel Spike. And then, of course, the compounding factor of Beast Boost. Every time an Ultra Beast takes a knockout, they gain a stage, or increased stage in their highest stat, which in this case is attack for Stakataka, which can really let him, let the ball roll and get a couple of knockouts, get to like +3 attack, +2 defense. This is a pretty good spot for it.
This is an amazing spot for it, and there is no light screen active. So regardless of what those two last Pokemon are, if they're the Torkoal and the Venusaur, if it's the Hatterene and the Torkoal, Ben is in a position where those hits, when they connect, they will find the knockouts that he was unable to get in Game 2. I'm also very impressed that this Stakataka only took that little damage from the Max Steel Spike on the Metagross. I was honestly expecting it to be a bit more damage, and especially after the defense boost from its own Max Steel Spike, it should be able to hold on through a Stomping Tantrum, assuming it's allowed to connect. So Stakataka, despite all odds, will get the opportunity to utilize all 3 turns of its Dynamax in this game.
Max Steel Spike from Stakataka towards the Comfey slot, which will bring it down to its Focus Sash, so cannot get the knockout. He's going to have to either double target it with Hatterene here or, do something else to try to hit it next turn again to knock it out. That is another defense boost for both Indeedee and Stakataka. And the Expanding Force, that's how you get it. Expanding Force with Psychic Terrain on the field is a spread attack that hits both of your opponents there. All you needed to do was 1 HP, and that's exactly what Indeedee was able to go for there. In return, Metagross knocks out Indeedee on this turn as well. One thing that Focus Sash did save, if you think about it, was it didn't give Stakataka an additional Beast Boost because Indeedee got the knockout.
And that's unfortunate, but I think Stakataka will be fine, all things considered. Mitchell is down to his last 2 Pokemon. It's going to be that Goodra and that Metagross, and since Trick Room is still active, Stakataka will have the opportunity to go for a very powerful Gyro Ball or high horsepower, or maybe even a Rock Slide into Mitchell's Pokemon. Knowing that Ben sent in the Torkoal here, I would assume it's going to go straight for those eruptions, which means Stakataka would be best off targeting that Goodra with a Gyro Ball, and the combination of the Choice Specs Sun Boosted full health eruption on that Torkoal without the light screen defense as well, and the Gyro Ball on that Goodra should be enough to knock it out. I think that Metagross is guaranteed to be knocked out this turn, and I really like how Mitchell's protecting it here because it's going to come down to, can he get through this Trick Room?
And as we saw, this is the final turn of Trick Room. I was going to say, if Venusaur was the 4th Pokemon on Ben's side, which has now been proven to be, you're okay with Trick Room going down. Expecting Mitchell to double protect to wait out of Trick Room All you've done now is let Venusaur switch in for absolutely free, and now can go for Sleep Powders next turn. As this Gyro Ball goes into the Protect, Twisted Dimensions return to normal, Psychic Terrain is gone, but now Venusaur with Chlorophyll under the sun is ready to go.
One thing that this Venusaur does have to be careful about is a sun-boosted flamethrower from this Goodra. So as a result, I think the Venusaur has to try and target the Goodra with something, or maybe even go for a Protect, but it doesn't have it. And on top of all of that, Goodra's ability, Sap Sipper, will ensure that Sleep Powder as a Grass-type move will not work against it. So this Venusaur in a very tough spot. Yes, Trick Room is over, but what do? I think Ben has to accept that this Venusaur will be knocked out, go for the Earth Power or the Sleep Powder onto the Metagross, and then hope that Stakataka and Torkoal can power through the Goodra despite its high defenses.
Sleep Powder connecting onto Metagross, forcing it to stay asleep this turn. And Flamethrower from Goodra, even with the Sun Boost, is not enough for a one-hit KO. So Venusaur is still sticking around next turn. Gyro Ball, +1 attack from Stakataka into Goodra. Not enough for a knockout. Goodra, kind of a middling speed tier, not too fast, not too slow, and that ends up saving it this turn.
Yeah, and on top of that too, Goodra is forced to attack the Stakataka with a Muddy Water in the sunlight. You could go for a Flamethrower, certainly would be more accurate, but at the same time, Stakataka's defenses are just going to do so well. Getting the Sleep Powder to connect to that Metagross was so important, as Metagross was really Mitchell's best shot at finding a way through the Stakataka, which is a huge threat right now. And even on top of all of this, there's still that Torkoal in the back as well.
Venusaur with Earth Power into Metagross. Not enough for a knockout, surprisingly there. Of course, Light Screen is still up, so it's not like it's not full effective damage there, but Metagross unfortunately staying asleep here. And Stakataka setting up Trick Room, so now Stakataka will be moving first. Maybe Ben even thought Venusaur would get knocked out from the Flamethrower, which would have given him a free switch into Torkoal.
Yeah, that I must have missed the weakness policy activation on that Stakataka, since that Flamethrower certainly would have done it, but or actually wait, no, it wouldn't have, because Stakataka is a dual typing. You gotta stay on your toes with these matchups sometimes, but still, with that Trick Room up, all Torkoal has to do is get a safe switch in onto the field. As long as Sun remains active, both of these Pokemon are going to be knocked out by Eruption. So just a fantastic play from Ben. Adjusting the Hatterene for the Stakataka really just defined this Game 3 in a way that's worked out perfectly for him.
Gyro Ball goes into Goodra's Protect, though, not targeting down the Metagross, and Metagross stays asleep for a third turn. That is huge, because if it woke up, it could go for the Stomping Tantrum into the Stakataka and knock it out, but instead, everybody is still on the field. It's still 3-2 in this spot. Reflect has worn off. At this point, that was another factor into why Gyro Ball did not knock out before, because Reflect was up. So now you still have that Torkoal in the back. Your worry is you don't want this to take too long and then have Trick Room run out.
Yeah, you honestly almost wanted the Metagross to wake up that turn and pick up that knockout so you could get the Torkoal out onto the field.
Gyro Ball taking down Goodra. Goodra has tried its best in this set, but as of right now, its best has not been enough. A second attack boost from Stakataka will not really matter, because Stomping Tantrum knocks it out cleanly from the Metagross there. So it is Venusaur and Torkoal. The Metagross actually knocking itself out from Life Orb Recoil, and brick by brick, Ben Madigan has stacked up his